Ele é especialista em finanças e agente do mercado financeiro. Já trabalhou para JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse e assim como em vários outros bancos, nos principais centros comerciais do mundo, como Londres, Nova York, Singapura, Frankfurt, Dubai e Hong Kong. Apresento-os então Andy Duncan.
Olá novamente. Eu espero que vocês estão tendo dia fantástico. Ontem vodka, hoje água. Now, too much of a surprise there. Today I'm going to talk about what I'm going to call the new barbarians and what drives these people on the modern left. I want to examine the perfect storm that has debased them from the sophistication on the left there, that's Friedrich Engels, to the debased state that we see on the right 100 years later. How did this happen? I'm going to talk about several threads. The main one is a thing called cognitive dissonance, which I'll explain shortly. The second one is the wonderful work of the Austrian school in smashing Marx's economics. The third part is the assault of knowledge on the destruction of socialism, so the knowledge about the Gulag and all the people who've been killed in the 20th century in the Black Book of Communism and so on. And fourthly, how we need to get the left out of education, or how we need to get children out of the clutches of the state. And finally, we'll talk about how we can reduce the power of the left and talk to them and persuade them to come to our side without needing to wear body armor. The problem is, I have a confession to make. For 25 years, I was a committed Marxist from the age of 10 years old, which is amazing because I'm only 27 now, which is pretty amazing. I was a difficult child at 10 years old. My teachers put me in a special needs class at school because I used to ask them things like, why do I have to obey you? And things like that. Because I was in a special needs class, I couldn't learn anything. I had to go to a children's library. Now, in the children's library were books on the Soviet Union and how wonderful it was. Really, a state library full of books on communism. When I was 10, I was allowed into the adult library, and the first thing I did was read Das Kapital. A precocious 10-year-old. Had time on my hands. I read it. I thought I understood it. Obviously, I didn't, because no one can, because it's gibberish. But I thought I understood it. And I became a devout Marxist. And then it took me 25 years, a very long road, to get to here today. Also, as well, one day I finally found Human Action, and when I read Human Action, instantaneously, I was converted to Austrian economics. I'd been an Austrian all along, I just hadn't been clever enough to realize it. Now, most socialists I think, are good people inside. I think they do see a problem in society and they want to solve that problem. The problem is they've got the wrong answer. The problem in society is the state. Their answer is to increase the state until it's totalitarian. Our answer is to reduce the state until it's nothing. They know there's a problem, they just have the wrong answer. Now, this thing with the state was spotted by Mikhail Bakunin, the guy on the right there. He said to Marx in a personal conversation, your increase of the power of the state will just enable a new ruling class of bureaucrats and technocrats. You're an idiot. And Marx said to Bakunin, his great socialist enemy, you're an idiot because your anarchism will lead to little islands of property and freedom with heavily armed people creating little libertarian islands. And he was right too. So they were both right about each other, but they couldn't see their own flaws in their own particular problems. Now, one of the problems of being a socialist, it's very hard to remain a socialist. You're constantly being assaulted by knowledge. So we have 1984, An American in the Gulag, A Road to Serfdom. All these, Atlas Shrugged helped me get to Mises, by the way, because Mises is mentioned at the back of that book. Economics in One Lesson and the Black Book of Communism. Very hard to remain a socialist when you're faced with this avalanche of knowledge about how evil socialism is. And to do that, you need to fight a thing called cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? Scott Fitzgerald summed this up best with this quote, which I'll just read to you. "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function." George Orwell called exactly the same thing double think. Can you hold two ideas in your head that are, 2 + 2 = 27, etc., and survive? Now, many people can't. Many people can't function. We see books like this as well, slogans like this is double think. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. We see these things. If we can hold those ideas in the head at the same time, we can remain a socialist. The other problem for being a socialist is this a massive amount of knowledge which comes into you. So the socialists try to keep this knowledge out, but eventually the knowledge of how evil communism is will knock down even the strongest communist wall. Now, the information which really, I think, broke socialism in the 20th century was the Gulag Archipelago knowledge from Solzhenitsyn. Now, the leftists, when they read books like this, they had a choice. They could either go, this is true, this all happened, I'm going to renounce socialism. Or you can block this knowledge out because it offends you, it ruins your mind, it means you can't function anymore. Some few people like me manage to renounce socialism, but most socialists are incapable of doing that because this is the image they have of themselves. The internal image of a socialist is that they are wonderful, heroic humans helping the whole of humanity to a better place. This is their self-image of themselves. And it's a self-image I had for a long time too. They really love this idea. This is how they see their future world. But of course, there is that basic contradiction, which I mentioned earlier, between Marx creating a greater state, which is bizarre. Do you know what they think that was going to happen then? There's a huge state brought in to smash the evil capitalists, and then the state will wither away and disappear. Oh, really? And Bakunin, of course, an anarchist walks into my orchard and takes an apple off my tree, and I'm heavily armed, and I'm not going to stop him. He's a mad person. It's my property. Some socialists, though, have even gone to this point where they worship the mother goddess. Because the Austrian school smashed Marx's economics, they had to resort to primitivism, to multiculturalism, to environmentalism, to atheism, to all these isms. They had to resort to those things to get away from the assault on their Marxist economics by the Austrian school. They just need to avoid thinking. This is why they're so primitive at the moment, and with all this mother goddess worship and all this Gaia worship and so on. Now, this need to avoid thinking is paramount to being a socialist. I tried to avoid thinking for 25 years. I had to believe in my own perfection as a socialist, though I am still pretty perfect. But it was a long, hard struggle to overcome that assault of knowledge. Most of the socialists, they have to, in the end, reject rationality. And what happens now is they say things like, I believe in freedom of speech, yet they shut down freedom of speech. We've all seen the videos on YouTube of them shutting down free speech. They are now so intolerant of anti-socialist information, they scream abuse at people to stop hearing it. They don't want to hear the anti-socialist information because it will wreck their internal minds and their own internal view of themselves. They escape the truth with lies. That gives them more cognitive dissonance. They say they believe in love, but we can see on these YouTube videos they're full of hate. More cognitive dissonance. I think these contradictions, I believe in free speech, but you can't say that because it's wrong, has driven them all literally mad. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. Now, one of I think this has driven them all mad. Sorry, I forgot about this painting. Here's an instance of cognitive dissonance. Socialists will say, if you ask them, who's your favorite scientist? I'm predicting they're likely to say Galileo. Why will they say Galileo? Because he challenged the settled science of his day. The settled science of his day was that the sun goes around the earth, and he challenged that. And so he was taken aside by the Catholic Church And he stood there and said, I believe the earth goes round the sun. He challenged the settled science. That's why socialists love Galileo. What do you think would happen to me if I stood up in front of a lot of socialists and said, I challenge global warming? I would be howled at, shouted out, called a denier, insulted, and finally called a racist, and hauled off for being totally stupid, for daring to challenge the settled science of today. So the complete contradiction, this cognitive dissonance is going on all the time in socialism. Lots of socialists are atheists as well. Why are they atheists? Because they say that we don't need God designer to create the world, because the spontaneous order of evolution is a fantastic system for creating a self-balancing system which creates a wonderful ecosphere. We don't need a designer. And then you say to them, okay, isn't that haven't you just described the free market? A self-settling, spontaneous order that solves all the problems really beautifully and creates a good market ecosphere. No, we need a designer for the market. So they use this exact opposite argument to the argument for why they believe in evolution, for why they don't believe in the market. They're idiots. These people are idiots. Idiotas, whatever the Portuguese word is. Great book. If you're really into this, why are people socialists, you need to read this book, The Fatal Conceit, by allegedly Hayek. It was actually mostly by his editor there, because Hayek was about 95 when this was published, but it's got a lot of Hayekian ideas in it. And what he describes is this system here, which I've tried to summarize on this slide. There are three modes of human thinking. When you're in the Stone Age, it's instinct. We're all just driven by instinct. And as we come out of the Stone Age, we develop traditions that our instincts hate. Traditions which are then codified by early religions. So thou shalt not kill. So Helio has a nice watch. My instinct, because he's not in my tribe, he's Brazilian and I'm English. My instinct is to steal his watch and knock him to the ground and run away. I now have a watch. The problem with that is that you never come near me again and I never see another watch. But if I can have a tradition of don't knock people over and steal their stuff, which I hate because I want that watch, then he'll bring more and more watches to me and I'll get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. So the tradition is that we impose traditions on ourselves in order to be better off, but our instincts hate these traditions. We want to kill other people and steal their stuff. We want to be better off in the tribe. Later on, of course, in ancient Greece and ancient China, we reach the stage of reason. And I think the Austrian school is a good school because it starts with tradition, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and moves on to reason about why markets work, etc. Socialism is about going back to the Stone Age of instinct. And this is another reason how they managed to evade cognitive dissonance. Again, we can see this march back to instinct in Venezuela, unfortunately. Oh, but that's not real socialism. Oh, really? Come on. The socialists can't see what's in front of them in Venezuela. They can't see it. They can't see what's going on there. It's very easy to see directly what's in front of you, such as poor people in the street. But you can't see the socialist systems that have created the poverty that's put people in the street. It's very easy to see a simple thing. It's very hard to see a difficult thing. Now, socialists will avoid anything unpleasant which challenges their views. Bring in a minimum wage. You see someone earning $8 an hour. You say, let's bring in a minimum wage to 10, fantastic, that person's happy, they vote for the politician who says it, that person's then sacked and hamburger machines are brought in which are now viable at $9 an hour, cheaper than the person at 10, so the person's sacked. The socialists can't see that. They don't want to hear how stupid minimum wage laws are. They call you a racist, they call you a greedy capitalist, anything with an ist on the end is what they will call you. Anything to avoid the truth. So there is also as well, you might have noticed this if you know socialists, there's often a very strong religious feeling about socialism as well. You don't believe in a God, your God is the state. And so this is the kind of thing that you're seeing. Now, how did this happen? How did socialism arise? I think in Europe, In 1450, we had printing, and people could print their own Bibles. And they finally didn't need the state's intellectual bodyguards, the priests. They could figure out things for themselves. And so many of these intellectuals in the late medieval period started becoming university professors, teachers, newspaper writers, broadcasters eventually, and worst of all, political agitators, with their new religion not being the church, but being the state. And I think as well, there's no coincidence that Germany was the modern birthplace, really, of socialism, and Germany was the first part of the Reformation with Martin Luther, again striking at the power of the church, and priests being sacked and then becoming bureaucrats and technocrats later on, latching on to the French Revolution. The Old Testament of socialism, of course, Das Kapital. The New Testament is the Communist Manifesto. There's the two books they hold up as their Bibles. Now, we know that Karl Menger was producing better ideas in Austria, but they were stayed in German, unfortunately, in Austria. And so when Marx published his books in the 19th century, most English-speaking people, that's all they were able to read, so a lot of people became theoretical socialists. But, again, Bauwerk and Mises smashed apart Marx once they were into English, which is fantastic. Capital and Interest, von Bauwerk's work, and particularly von Mises's Theory of Money and Credit, Economic Calculation in the Socialist Commonwealth, and the best, if you haven't read it, I don't know if Helios translated it, the best Mises book I think on this is Socialism, which is a fantastic book. If you really want to understand why, Theory of Money and Credit, Socialism, fantastic book there. The problem is, socialism is stronger than crystal meth. And as a 25-year addict of socialism, I can attest to that. It's very, very hard to break that habit of being a socialist. So, they're assaulted by all this knowledge. In the 1920s by Mises and von Bauwerk. How did the socialists respond to being smashed by the theory of money and credit and being smashed by socialism? What they did is they retreated into the swamp of cultural hegemony, particularly by this guy called Gramsci. Now, Gramsci, he created almost the modern left. He's one of the main people who sorted them out. What he did is he rejected Marxist materialism, and in a newspaper in Italy called New Order in 1919, he started all these ideas of political correctness, which we have today. His first thing he said is that the left wing should invade education. At this point, after his ideas came out, people in the left started invading schools and trying to start more state schools. And we see Hitler in 1930s Germany introduce state schools, and all around the world, leftist governments introducing state schools. The second idea is that the intellectuals should invade the media. That came from Gramsci. And we see things today in the mainstream media in the West. Pravda in the Soviet Union isn't as good is better than some of the newspapers that we have in the mainstream media. And this is all coming from Gramsci. Another Gramscian idea from the 1930s is mind control through language. I don't know if any of you here have used or participated in neurolinguistic programming, but neurolinguistic programming, or NLP, is the use of language to program people's brains. And socialists invented this a long time before Richard Bandler, the creator of NLP. So you can hypnotize people with words. So what kind of words do they use? They use all sorts of words, like they call women a minority. Now, women are usually half the population, often in many Western countries, more than half the population, but get labeled as a minority. It's a very clever use of language all the time from these people. The other thing they do, they want to smash bourgeois Christianity and traditional Christianity, get rid of Merry Christmas, bring in Happy Holidays. You want to smash another Christian tradition, stop calling things Easter, call them spring break. They're always doing that. Oh, and any college building named after a dead white man must be renamed after someone else who's not a white man. It must be something else. Doesn't matter what it is. And this is my favorite one of these controls of language, pro-choice. Socialists are all pro-choice. women's rights, pro-choice. They're not pro-choice about anything else. To be pro-choice about anything else, they would be libertarians, but they are pro-choice about this one thing. Again, it's this control of language, and we see this with political correctness. Now, so Marx brings in the economics, gets smashed by the Austrian school. Gramsci then evolves socialism into cultural hegemony. But this, again, is smashed by the Gulag, by ideas, news coming out of the Soviet Union about millions of people being slaughtered by Stalin. Now, fortunately for socialism, useful idiots like Professor Harold Lasky would go to the Soviet Union and come back and say how wonderful the underground system was in Moscow. And forget about the 100,000 people who were carted off last week to the Gulag and killed. But eventually, even Stalin, with his wonderful propaganda machine, couldn't hold it in, couldn't hold in the bad news about the mass butchery of people going on, as predicted by the Road to Serfdom by Hayek, of course. But, you know, still the useful idiots of the left wear T-shirts glorifying a mass murderer who used to shoot people without trial just for fun. There he is there again, he gets everywhere. I loved him too, that's why I used a photo of him earlier. But this mass butchery did eventually get out, especially after Hungary, which I think is in 1956, and the Prague Spring in 1968, and the Gulag Archipelago being smuggled past the KGB. These ideas get out. So socialism had to evolve again to avoid the information, to avoid that cognitive dissonance. So how did they do it? They did it with this guy. This guy's a German called Herbert Marcuse, and he came up with the New Left in the late 1960s and the early 1970s. Other people such as Marcuse came along. Ernst Bloch was another one, and he believed that socialism would, let me read this, would enable all human beings to become immortal and to eventually create God on earth. This religion inside socialism is always there. It's that Christian millennialism flipping into state worship. Now, you could actually say that the Austrians are a little bit religious. But if you invite me back next year, I'd like to do another talk on Austrianism as a religion. I think that would be interesting. But I don't think we are, because we challenge. Rothbard challenges Mises on anarchy. Kinsella challenges Rothbard on IP. We challenge our gods. We don't just take their word as holy law. So that's how the left has moved on. It keeps avoiding information, which challenges it. And finally, some good books there. This is the world that they think they're going to, but the only way they're going to get to that is via this process. They must avoid information, and the way to do that is to have disrationalia. What's this? This is the inability to think and to believe rationally, behave rationally despite adequate intelligence. This describes a lot of socialists. They are intelligent, but they can't think rationally. They don't want to think rationally. Why? Now, neuroscientists have determined that whenever we do anything, we assess everything emotionally first. So, do I want to buy a car? Caro. Do I want to buy it? You first of all decide emotionally, oh, it's a Ferrari, it's red, it has a nice deep sound. Then you do the rational thing. Oh, I haven't got any money. But you always do the emotional thing, and then you do the kind of rational thing afterwards. Socialists get stuck at the emotional. They are just purely emotional. What's this process? I had to invent a word, and a friend of mine, Michael McKay, helped me with this. I'm going to call this inability to think rationally copathetic. I've kind of derived it from the Greek there. I think socialists are copathetic. They get stuck at emotion and they can't do logic. They get very, very frustrated. They get angry. And they don't want to have to think. Now, another thing that socialists do as well to preserve socialism, and this comes from Gramsci, is invade the schools, and then they take the minds of children in schools, and then they put them through this sausage grinder. What one thing in British schools are you not allowed to do? I don't know if it's the same here in Brazil. You're not allowed to think. You are allowed to memorize from authorized books. You're never allowed to challenge authorized books, and you're definitely never allowed to think. So I think one of the things we have to do to get away from socialism is get children out of schools. We must educate them properly privately, not in a private sector controlled by the state, but at home, on the internet, with YouTube videos. Whatever we do, we must try to get our children away from the state, away from the day prisons of the modern state education system. But for a socialist, everything is about feelings. You must remember this. They don't think, it's just feelings. You know, they have feelings about polar bears. They have feelings about poverty. They have feelings about snowflakes. Instinct rules everything. This is the Hayekian idea, going back to instinct. Feelings and instinct and emotions. Letting your full instincts reign. So I'll now knock Helio over, take his watch, it makes me feel good. Or if I'm on a march, an anti-far march, smash a shop window and steal the evil capitalist stuff to make myself feel better. Instinct for a socialist rules everything. Reason disappears. Reason disappears. And so now we're back to Bakunin's idea. Don't worry about it, just let it happen. Just feel it go through your body, smash it, take it. Doesn't matter. And forget about Henry Hazlitt's ideas on broken windows. And this is because you're copathetic. You're back in the Stone Age in a tribe. You are in a tribe. And you can have instinct. You can have your instinct back. Let it scream, man. Or wait until the TV cameras are on before you... Check the TV cameras on before you let your instincts out. This is Stone Age behavior. Socialists are stuck in the Stone Age of instinct. Reason has gone. And this helps them avoid cognitive dissonance. How? Because you can be ethical and good inside your tribe. I can say I believe in free speech on my Berkeley campus because as long as you're in my tribe of left-wing people, you can say whatever you like. That other tribe over there, though, the hated tribe, they can't say anything because they're evil. They're the others. I don't know if any of you watched Lost. They're the others. Oh, by the way, do you know how Game of Thrones is going to end? This is my theory. I reckon the White Walkers, the others, are going to be the good guys in the end. But that's just my theory. And Daenerys Targaryen is going to be the evil one. But that's just a theory. We'll see in July or whenever, next year. So you can be ethical and good as a socialist inside your tribe of other lefties, and you can be destructive and evil to outsiders, the others, because they're the others, they don't count. This is how they think, and this helps them avoid cognitive dissonance. They can hold two ideas in their head at the same time, be nice to people in your tribe, be horrible to people outside your tribe, and still function. You've solved Scott Fitzgerald's dilemma. You can now do doublethink and survive. The circle is squared. But how are we going to get back our world? Let me be brief here, I haven't got much time. We must achieve our own cultural hegemony. So I want you all to be writing novels on freedom. I want you to be doing poetry on freedom, doing paintings. If you don't write books on economics, do something that you can. We need to take our own culture back. We must also as well get children out of state schools. We must avoid this kind of tribal thing. Get the child away from socialism. I think was it the Jesuits? They said, give me the child when he's 7 and I will give you the man. What we must do is keep the child away from socialism and I will give you the Austrian in the future. So do lots of things. Write novels, come to meetings like this, write books on Austrian economics, resist political correctness, help children learn about the world away from the clutches of the state. This is particularly why I applaud Helio's creation. Oh, these are great cultural ideas. Maybe we can't all make The Matrix, but maybe we should all try to make movies like The Matrix. I love that movie. What a movie. That's how I see myself. That's my internal self-image. I love the work Helio and the Mises Brazil Institute have done to translate the works of Mises and Rothbard, etc., into Portuguese, which is a beautiful language. And thank you, Helio, for doing all this amazing work. I'm pretty much done now. Now, evolution, the spontaneous order, it generates evil things, doesn't it? Evolution generates evil things. It generates viruses. and it generates slaver ants. It's a spontaneous order, but it's not always good. It does generate bad things. Strangely, sex was an invention of life to evade viruses, if you read the kind of genetics on it, which is interesting. Life does get around bad things that evolve out of it. So life gets around viruses and it gets around slaver ants and other horrible things in nature by evolving those things away. We must evolve things away from the state too. The free market is a spontaneous order that has generated statism. And macro-parasites, the state, and micro-parasites, robbers and thieves, we can also work to crush those things the same way evolution has tried to stop viruses and bacteria from destroying us. The virus of socialism does wrap us in chains, but we can break those chains. We have to work at it. Muito obrigado.
Bom, obrigada pela incrível palestra. Nós temos aqui algumas questões. A primeira, você não acha que houve uma evolução no socialismo desde o século passado? Em sua opinião, qual é o futuro do socialismo?
Yeah, I think there has been an evolution. It's had to avoid information more and more. So we see pictures from Venezuela. We have to shut that information out of our minds to remain a socialist. So what we do is we create these evil other groups, and we put all the hatred in the world onto those other groups. You take the hatred out of yourself and you put it onto the other groups. I think this is one of the main developments in socialism in the last 10 years. So I take my hatred out of myself and I give it to you, the Trump supporter. So before socialists used to, I actually remember, I'm sorry, I'm old enough to remember when you could have a reasoned debate with a socialist, or when I was a socialist, I could have a reasoned debate with a conservative. We would talk rationally. But now the development in socialism is to avoid discussion completely. They just don't want to talk about anything. They just want to shut you down as hard and fast as they can. They don't want to hear truth. They don't want to hear anything that will rock their fragile mental world. So I think that's the main evolution of socialism. It's away from discussion, debate. It's just about shutting all the opposition down, putting all your hatred into the other group. I think that's how it's gone over the last few years. Sorry, can you just repeat the second part of the question again?
Qual é o futuro do socialismo na sua opinião?
Oh, I'm a great believer that it's an evil disease that will disappear. And when that Now, why do I believe that? I look out here. You know, you see intelligent people who can think. What do the socialists have? They have morons who can't think. We will beat them, but it will take a long time to do that. With the coming of the singularity, with nanotechnology, with 3D printing, and the singularity coming together, all these things coming together, the state will disappear, not because we defeat it. The state will disappear because it will become absolutely unnecessary. So I think the state is going to disappear.
Andy, a pergunta aqui recebi algumas nesse sentido, como os estudantes liberais, eles devem se comportar quando confrontados com seus mais variados professores 50 tons de vermelho, ou com os seus professores socialistas?
I don't know. I would say this. I have friends who've done economics degrees. Now, if you want to get an economics degree, you're going to have to do Keynesianism, unfortunately. My advice to anyone doing that, you can't diss the professor. So if I'm in a lecture with you and you're the professor and I diss you, I say, actually, you're a fool. Mises is right and you're an idiot, and Keynes is an idiot, and everything you believe in is an idiot, and stop holding up that book on Keynes as proof that your theories are right. That book's stupid. What's going to happen to me? I'm going to get Fs in every exam. Somehow, even though I'm just using a code number for my exams, somehow my exam will end up with an F. So don't do it. Don't put yourself under the bus. Just kind of come to things like this, come to other things Helio runs at weekends, read, talk to people who are rational. Don't try and fight these violent people. They will hurt you. Just keep your head down, but get your degree, get a first-class degree. Then in your PhD, go to town. Find a really good professor somewhere who also agrees in Austrian economics. Then do a PhD, and then move on from there. But for your undergraduate level, I would say just toe the line, get a first-class degree, and then you can fight back. That's all I can offer, really. I don't want anyone going under a bus for this.
Nessa matéria eu sempre lembro do Hayek quando ele dizia que, para ele, um socialista sempre detinha um erro epistemológico. Então, por isso que ele jamais combatia moralmente um socialista. Ele tentava desconstruir o equívoco epistemológico. É claro que a gente sabe que há problemas de caráter, né, nesse meio todo, mas partir desse princípio, assumir esse princípio é uma presunção muito forte. Então, acredito que o Hayek ia muito bem quando atacava a epistemologia, o equívoco epistemológico. E, para finalizar, Andy, quais os serviços que você... a pergunta aqui, quais os serviços que você entende que não deveriam ser privatizados? Se existem.
Hoppien. Privatize everything. Privatize everything. Privitatos todos.